What if the chaos you see on your phone each morning is not chaos at all, but choreography? What if the arguments, headlines, and bitter fractures in families and nations are not accidental fractures, but carefully scored lines in a marble statue, carved with intention by hands you cannot see? You might scroll past them the way you walk past cracks in a sidewalk, but they are there, shaping the direction of your steps. And perhaps the most unsettling question is this: how much of what you believe to be your opinion was planted in you like a seed by someone who understood, long before you did, how to split a field so the harvest could be claimed without a fight? This is the invisible theater we are all sitting in. The play where the actors seem to argue, but the script is written for an audience that doesn't realize they are part of the set. In the age of social media, you do not need to send armies to the gates. You only need to divide the minds inside them. The old Roman emperors understood this well. Divide et impera, divide and rule, was not just a tactic for managing distant provinces. It was an art form, a philosophy, a method of control that turns human nature itself into the strongest prison walls. And today, whether you adore him or detest him, Donald Trump stands as one of the most visible modern figures whose presence has reawakened this ancient mechanism in the public consciousness. But before we reach him, we must pass through the world we live in now. You feel it every day, the mental exhaustion of living in a world without pause, the constant drip of information that soaks not just your attention, but your identity. 1 minute, you are focused on your work, your family, your private worries. The next, a notification pulls you into a stranger's outrage, a trending debate, a headline engineered to make you pick a side instantly. You think you are making a choice, but the choice has already been narrowed for you. This side or that side, yes or no, for or against. The illusion of freedom is preserved, but the cage has been built around the frame of your own mind. It is here, in this swirling vortex of distraction, that the ancient Roman principle of divide and rule becomes more than a historical curiosity. It becomes a mirror, and like any mirror worth looking into, it shows you not only the world, but yourself. The way you are moved, the way you react, the way your attention is carved into pieces until you no longer see the whole picture. Carl Jung once warned that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The Romans might have phrased it differently, but they would have nodded in agreement. The unconscious masses are the easiest to govern. The interesting thing about divide and rule is that it does not require brute force. It thrives in the absence of it. Like a skilled chess player, it works not by knocking pieces off the board, but by ensuring each piece moves in the direction most advantageous to the player. Trump, whether as a strategist or as the lightning rod around which strategies coalesce, has embodied this truth. His presence on the political stage has not merely provoked disagreement, it has created identity camps, deep and often immovable, where allegiance or opposition becomes part of one's very sense of self. In Rome, this was a dream scenario. When the people defined themselves by the battle, the emperor need only watch. And yet, there is another layer here, one that reaches beyond politics, beyond Rome, beyond Trump. This is about the architecture of influence itself, about the ways human beings respond when their reality is framed by forces they cannot see. This is about learning to master your own mindset in a world that thrives on dividing it. The Romans may have used bread and circuses. The modern world uses algorithms and outrage. But the underlying psychology, the lever that moves the weight, is the same. If you found your way here, it's likely because some part of you senses this. You might have felt the unease of being pushed toward opinions you didn't fully choose, the fatigue of debates that never resolve, the quiet suspicion that life is more than the headlines would have you believe. And if that is the case, then this journey is for you. Here, we will not simply talk about Trump or Rome as distant objects of study. We will treat them as keys, as lenses, as living metaphors that can sharpen your ability to see the architecture of control and, more importantly, to step outside it. Before we go deeper, I'll ask something of you, not as a transaction, but as an invitation. If you want to explore these deeper currents with me, if you sense that understanding the hidden mechanics of power can help you reclaim your own mental sovereignty, then subscribe to this channel. Think of it not as a clique, but as a commitment to a shared journey. A place where we sift through the noise, peel back the layers, and reconnect with the deeper purpose that the modern world works so hard to blur. You are not here to be told what to think. You are here to remember how to think with clarity again. Over the course of this exploration, you will see how the Roman strategy of divide and rule is not simply a political maneuver, but a universal principle that appears in boardrooms, classrooms, and even families. You will see how Trump's public persona, whether you see it as masterful or manipulative, reflects and refracts this ancient art. And you will see how these same forces shape your daily life in ways so subtle they can only be recognized once you step outside the trance. But more than that, you will learn something far more valuable: how to guard your attention as if it were the rarest treasure you possess, because it is. You will see how discipline, focus, and the ability to resist being split from yourself are not just virtues, but survival skills in a world designed to fragment you. This is not about withdrawing from life. It is about entering it fully, armed with awareness that cannot be so easily divided. So, let us step through this first door together. Beyond it lies a realm where ancient senators and modern influencers share the same toolkit, where Julius Caesar and cable news hosts drink from the same well, where Trump's rallies and Rome's arenas echo with the same human energies. To walk through this door is to risk seeing patterns you cannot unsee, but it is also to begin reclaiming the one empire that has always truly been yours, the empire of your own mind. The ancient Romans did not invent the principle of divide and rule, but they perfected it. They understood that the strongest chains are not forged from iron, but from perception. A people convinced they are at odds with one another will police themselves far more efficiently than any legion could. This is not simply a tactic of control. It is a lens through which to see human nature itself. And when you begin to look through that lens, you notice that history is littered with those who understood it instinctively, and those who were undone by failing to recognize it. At its heart, divide et impera is the art of managing attention and loyalty by ensuring they never converge fully on a single point of resistance. In Rome, it meant keeping rival provinces in competition, balancing the ambitions of generals, and feeding the populace enough spectacle to keep their frustrations turned toward each other instead of the Senate. In our time, the principle has migrated from the battlefield to the arena of culture, from the Senate floor to the digital feed. The lines of division are drawn not on maps, but in the circuitry of the human brain. Neuroscience offers a chilling confirmation of what Roman statesmen intuited by instinct. The amygdala, that almond-shaped cluster deep within your brain, responds most readily to threats, whether they are real or perceived. Fear sharpens focus, and focus becomes fixation. When a headline or a social media post triggers outrage or disgust, it lights up the amygdala, narrowing your mental field until nuance disappears. In that tunnel of attention, the other side becomes an abstraction, an enemy. In such a state, you are not reasoning, you are reacting. And reaction is the ideal soil for manipulation. Carl Jung, observing the psychic fractures of the 20th century, spoke of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we disown and then project onto others. A society trained to externalize its shadow is a society primed for divide and rule. If I can convince you that the threat you feel comes entirely from them, then I have taken possession of the most intimate space in your psyche, the place where you define yourself against the world. Trump, in his rise, has functioned as both mirror and magnet for these projections. To his supporters, he is the defiant embodiment of grievances they felt were ignored. To his detractors, he is the living avatar of everything they fear or despise in modern politics. In either case, the figure at the center becomes less a person than a screen upon which the collective shadow is cast. The Stoics would warn us here. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, wrote in his Meditations that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If your thoughts are perpetually dyed in the hues of division, the fabric of your being will begin to fray. For the Stoic, mastery over the self, what we might call mindset mastery today, is the only defense against the corrosion of constant conflict. Discipline equals freedom, not because discipline is rigid, but because it allows you to remain whole in a world eager to split you apart. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who endured the concentration camps, spoke of the last of human freedoms, the ability to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. Frankl's insight cuts to the core of why divide and rule is so effective. It thrives on the erosion of that freedom. If I can provoke you to respond in the exact way I predict, whether with blind loyalty or blind rage, then your freedom of choice has been replaced by a reflex. Regaining that inner sovereignty is not a matter of choosing one camp over another, but of stepping outside the game entirely to see its rules. Consider how this plays out in the digital age. Social media algorithms, though impersonal, behave like the most cunning Roman strategists. They feed you more of what provokes you, not what enlightens you. Because outrage keeps you engaged, and engagement is the currency. The more you react, the more you are shown reasons to react. Before long, your mental map of the world is no longer drawn by your own observation, but by the invisible hand of a system that profits from your division. This is not conspiracy, it is business. But the effect is the same as it was in Caesar's Rome, a populace more focused on its internal skirmishes than on the architecture of the power that governs it. Here is where Napoleon Hill's work offers an unexpected bridge. In Think and Grow Rich, Hill emphasized the power of a definite chief aim, a clear, unifying purpose that organizes all your actions. Without such purpose, the mind is easily scattered, like a ship without a rudder, drifting wherever the currents of suggestion carry it. From the perspective of divide and rule, the absence of a unifying aim is the greatest vulnerability. For the individual, it means being divided against oneself. For a society, it means being divided into endless factions, each convinced it is fighting the essential battle, unaware that the deeper currents run in another direction entirely. So, the core themes begin to align. Divide and rule is not simply a method for controlling the many through the few. It is an ever-present temptation to live divided within your own mind. The antidote is not outrage, but integration, emotional sovereignty, radical self-responsibility, the ability to reconnect with purpose so deeply that no external force can splinter it. This does not mean retreating into isolation. It means entering the world with such clarity of aim that the tactics of division lose their grip on you. Trump, in this frame, becomes less the subject and more the case study, a modern lightning rod around which the ancient principle is alive and visible. To study his effect on the culture, whether you praise it or condemn it, is to study the anatomy of influence itself. The Romans would have recognized the pattern instantly. Create an arena, fill it with drama, divide the spectators, and while they shout at each other, the real decisions are made elsewhere. The challenge, and the opportunity, is to cultivate a mind that can see the arena for what it is, without becoming a passive spectator or a pawn in the game. This is where the old philosophers and the modern mindset mentors converge. Whether it's the Stoics urging mastery over perception, Jung calling for the integration of the shadow, or Hill insisting on a definite aim, the message is the same. The only true victory is the one you win over your own divided nature. And perhaps that is the unspoken promise in studying divide and rule today, that by recognizing it outside, you begin to heal it inside. When you no longer take the bait, when you no longer feel compelled to play the part assigned to you by the script, you step into a freedom that no empire can legislate, no algorithm can predict, and no demagogue can command. Every principle of power has its shadow twin in myth. Long before Roman generals codified divide et impera, storytellers had woven its essence into legends and parables, because the human heart understands in symbols what the rational mind resists in plain language. If we wish to see the architecture of division clearly, we must step for a moment into those older worlds, where kings, tricksters, and warriors played out the eternal dramas of unity and fracture. Imagine the ancient Greek myth of Eris, the goddess of strife. She was not invited to a great wedding feast of the gods, and so in her absence she devised a gift, a golden apple, inscribed with the words, "To the fairest." She rolled it into the banquet hall and watched as Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite began to quarrel over who deserved it. That quarrel grew into the judgment of Paris, which in turn sparked the Trojan War. Eris needed no army, she needed only a seed, a single object, designed to provoke comparison, resentment, and rivalry. The Romans would have recognized her genius immediately. For them, the golden apple was never literal. It was any issue, any grievance, any spark capable of setting neighbors against each other, leaving the true instigator unseen. Fast forward centuries, and you can see echoes of Eris's apple in our own time. Replace the banquet hall with a media feed, the goddess with a political provocateur, and the apple with a tweet or a headline. Once dropped, it does not need to be explained. It only needs to be seen. The divisions do the rest. Trump, consciously or instinctively, has played in this arena where symbols and triggers matter more than policy white papers. His phrases, sometimes blunt, sometimes theatrical, function like modern apples of discord, capable of reframing an entire news cycle with a few words. Whether this is art, instinct, or accident is secondary to the fact that it works. But the principle is older still. Consider the biblical story of the Tower of Babel. Humanity, speaking one language, comes together to build a tower to the heavens. In the story, God scatters them by confounding their speech, giving each group a different tongue. Suddenly, unity dissolves into confusion, and the tower is abandoned. The ancients understood this as a cautionary tale. Unity of speech, and by extension, of purpose, is powerful but fragile. Division, once seated, can halt the grandest of projects without the need for violence. Rome applied this lesson not by divine intervention, but by calculated policy, ensuring that provinces remained culturally distinct and often at odds with one another. In the modern era, language need not mean literal tongues. It can mean frameworks, values, or information ecosystems. The fact that you and your neighbor can look at the same event and see entirely different realities is the digital Tower of Babel in action. The hero's journey, as Joseph Campbell described it, also holds an inversion of this principle. In the traditional arc, the hero must face trials that often include betrayal from within their own ranks. Odysseus, after years of wandering, must deal not only with monsters and storms, but with suitors who have divided his household in Ithaca. In these moments, the hero's strength is tested not by external foes alone, but by the fractures within their own sphere. This is the personal echo of divide and rule. Before you can reclaim the throne, you must unite the fragments of your own world and your own self. Carl Jung might call this an individuation crisis, the inner journey of integrating the fragmented parts of the psyche. In that sense, the political and the personal mirror each other perfectly. When a society is divided, it behaves like a psyche at war with itself, projecting shadow elements onto an other rather than claiming them. When a person is divided, they are more easily swayed by external forces that promise certainty or belonging. Trump's public role, as catalyst, disruptor, or unifier, depending on your vantage, serves as a living symbol of that dividing line, the point where shadow meets projection. Another metaphor comes from the Roman arena itself. Picture the Colosseum on a sweltering afternoon, the stone tiers packed with citizens, their voices merging into a roar. Below, gladiators clash, and all eyes are fixed on the fight. Few notice the senators and patrons in the shaded stands, exchanging nods and deals while the crowd's attention is riveted elsewhere. The spectacle is not the point. The spectacle is the distraction. Division, in this way, is not always about turning groups against each other in open hostility. Sometimes it is about directing their gaze so intently toward a chosen conflict that they fail to notice the real movement happening in the shadows. This was true in Rome, and it is true in any media-saturated age. A society enthralled by its own Colosseum cannot easily see the Senate. Trump's rallies, love them or loathe them, function in part as modern arenas. The spectacle is heightened, the stakes framed as existential, the audience polarized not only by the message, but by the meaning they attach to the act of attending or opposing. To his supporters, they are gatherings of solidarity. To his opponents, symbols of danger. The physical event becomes secondary to the narrative battle it ignites. The Romans would have admired the efficiency. One stage, two audiences, and a division deepened without the need for direct confrontation between the strategist and the entire populace. Yet, even in these stories of division, there is always the counter-thread, the possibility of integration. In myth, the hero who survives the test of internal fracture does so by uniting what was divided, not by annihilating the other. Odysseus reclaims his household, not by burning it down, but by restoring order. The builders of Babel, in the mythical sense, could begin again if they learned to speak with shared meaning. The individual, in Jung's model, becomes whole not by rejecting the shadow, but by integrating it. If divide and rule is a universal pattern, then so too is the impulse to heal what is split. This is where the symbolic layer offers its greatest gift. It reminds us that every fracture is also a map, showing us where we have been separated from ourselves or from one another. The golden apple can be ignored. The babble of differing tongues can be bridged with patience. The arena can be walked away from, leaving the senators to exchange their nods in an empty house. But these acts require awareness, and awareness requires the discipline to see beyond the immediate spectacle. If you have followed this far, you already sense that this is not simply a lecture about history or politics. It is an invitation to see the world and yourself in patterns. To recognize that the forces that pull nations apart are the same forces that can fragment a mind, a family, or a friendship. And to understand that mastery over these forces begins not in shouting louder than the other side, but in hearing the quiet, steady voice beneath the noise. So, if you are ready to continue this journey, to keep peeling back the layers, to move from the symbolic to the practical, where we turn these insights into tools you can use every day, then subscribe now. Consider it the decision to train your perception like a muscle, to grow your mental toughness so that no golden apple, no tower, no arena can dictate the borders of your thought. It is one thing to understand divide et impera as an abstract principle, to see it painted in the colors of Rome or woven into the myths of gods and heroes. It is another to feel its texture in your own hands, to recognize how it shapes your mornings, your conversations, and your choices. The true value of this exploration is not in admiring the architecture of control from a safe distance, but in noticing the way its beams and struts pass through your own life. Begin with your attention. In the Roman world, attention was physical. Citizens gathered in the forum, spectators filled the Colosseum, and senators spoke in halls where the human voice could fill the air. Today, attention has been digitized. It travels at the speed of light, compressed into screens that you carry in your pocket. And yet the principle is identical. Whoever controls the direction of attention controls the tempo of power. If you check your phone first thing in the morning and find yourself instantly pulled into an outrage or a crisis, that is not random. It is the golden apple rolling across your table before you've even had your coffee. The countermeasure here is deceptively simple, but demands commitment. Reclaim the opening moments of your day. Napoleon Hill would call this the establishment of a definite chief aim before the world tells you what to care about. Marcus Aurelius would see it as premeditatio malorum, anticipating the disturbances of the day so they do not catch you unguarded. Whether you frame it as discipline equals freedom, as Jocko Willink would say, or as mindfulness, the effect is the same. You become the gatekeeper of your own mind, rather than leaving it open to the first invader who knocks. Next, consider the way division works in conversation. In Rome, the Senate could be swayed by rumors about one general or another, whispered in corridors. In our time, social divisions often begin as small disagreements amplified by the mechanics of digital engagement. A comment thread becomes a battlefield, not because the subject demanded it, but because the design of the platform rewards conflict. If you have ever found yourself rehearsing an argument long after the other person has stopped speaking, you have felt the residue of this design. Carl Jung might suggest that such fixation reveals something unintegrated within you, that your reaction says as much about your own shadow as it does about the other person. Practical mastery here involves what Viktor Frankl called the space between stimulus and response. In that space lies the choice to engage or to redirect. This is not withdrawal or avoidance. It is the conscious decision not to be drafted into every battle presented to you. You can still discuss, debate, and disagree, but from a position of wholeness rather than reflex. The Romans knew that a divided people will fight each other long before they unite against the ruler. In your life, the same applies. A divided mind will sabotage itself long before it challenges the forces that divide it. Then there is the question of identity. One of the most potent tools of divide and rule is the creation of identity camps, so absolute that leaving them feels like a betrayal of the self. This is visible in politics, fandoms, corporate culture, anywhere belonging is leveraged as a gate to truth. Trump's effect on the American psyche illustrates this vividly. For many, he has become more than a political figure. He is a test of allegiance. To support him or to oppose him becomes not just an opinion, but a statement of who you are. This is a textbook example of what the Romans engineered in their provinces. Make allegiance personal, and you will never need to enforce it by force. Breaking free from this requires a mindset that Napoleon Hill and Jim Rohn would both recognize: the habit of defining yourself by your principles, not by your camp. Rohn often warned that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, a reminder that identity is shaped by proximity. If you surround yourself with constant division, you will carry it inside you. If you deliberately choose influences that cultivate clarity, resilience, and purpose, you become far harder to manipulate. We can also look at the strategic side, how divide and rule is used not only against the public, but by individuals in competitive environments. In business, for example, managers may keep teams siloed to prevent unity that could challenge leadership. In families, manipulation can take the form of pitting siblings against each other for approval. In both cases, the principle thrives in the absence of transparency. The solution, then, is to cultivate environments in your team, your friendships, your inner circle, where open communication and shared goals dissolve the easy fault lines. But this requires courage, because unity is not always comfortable. It means confronting the differences and shadows that division allows you to avoid. It means listening long enough to hear the common thread beneath the noise. This is as true within yourself as it is in the world. Integrating your shadow, as Jung advised, is not pleasant work. It is the grind over comfort, the deliberate choice to face what is uncomfortable so that it can no longer be used against you. In the end, the practical implication of all this is startlingly direct. The same discipline that allows you to master your own habits also allows you to resist the forces that seek to divide you. Growth mindset, radical self-responsibility, anticipatory awareness. These are not just self-help phrases. They are shields against one of the oldest strategies of control in history. And when you live them out, you stop being a spectator in the Colosseum and become the architect of your own arena. To bring this into your daily reality, ask yourself each night, where was my attention today? Was it split by forces outside me, or was it directed by my own choice? Did I react to the golden apples rolled into my path, or did I set them aside to continue building what matters? These questions are not abstract. They are the foundations of mental sovereignty. And mental sovereignty, once tasted, is not easily surrendered. When you look back across the arc we've traveled, from Rome's Senate chambers to modern headlines, from mythic golden apples to digital algorithms, you begin to see that divide and rule is less a political tactic than a law of human nature. Like gravity, it pulls at us constantly, whether we are aware of it or not. It thrives in the cracks of our attention, in the fractures of our identity, in the spaces where we project our shadows onto others instead of owning them. And if we do not learn to recognize it, we will spend our lives as its subjects without ever seeing the throne it serves. But there is another truth running alongside it, a truth that is older, deeper, and more powerful than division. Every time a society has been split, there have been those who refuse to let the fault lines dictate their vision. Every time an individual has felt torn between competing loyalties, there has been the possibility of integration. The Romans perfected divide et impera, but they also produced Marcus Aurelius, who reminded himself each morning that his mind was his own. The modern world may amplify division with technology, but it also gives you unprecedented tools to connect, to learn, to shape your own perception. The question is not whether the principle exists. It does and always will, but whether you choose to live at its mercy or to master the only domain it cannot touch without your consent, your inner world. In this, Donald Trump's presence on the public stage becomes less a political argument and more a mirror. He is a case study in how a single figure can polarize a society, not only by what he does, but by what people project onto him. Supporters and opponents alike are drawn into the gravitational field of the conflict, their attention tethered to the figure at the center. And here is the quiet, liberating insight. You can observe the field without being caught in it. You can see the currents without being swept away. You can refuse to let any person, any faction, any algorithm dictate the borders of your thought. This is where the journey becomes personal. Reconnecting with purpose is not an abstract ideal. It is the act of choosing what your life is about, so clearly and so completely that no golden apple rolled into your path can pull you from it. Emotional sovereignty is not cold detachment. It is the warmth of knowing that your peace cannot be bought or stolen by the shifting winds of public outrage. Discipline equals freedom, not because it is austere, but because it makes you unbreakable. These are not luxuries in the modern world. They are survival skills. We began with a question. What if the chaos you see each day is not chaos at all, but choreography? Now you know the steps. You have seen the stage. And in seeing it, you are no longer just part of the audience. You are free to walk out into the sunlight, carrying with you the awareness that no empire, ancient or modern, can rule a mind that has chosen to unite itself. So I will ask you, as I did at the beginning, to join me in this work. Subscribe to this channel, not as an act of passive consumption, but as a commitment to training your perception, to guarding your attention, to practicing the discipline that keeps you whole in a divided world. Think of it as joining a fellowship of those who refuse to be ruled by the oldest trick in the book. And when you're ready for the next step, for a deeper look into the mechanics of influence, persuasion, and the invisible currents that move public opinion, I invite you to watch our next video, How Aristotle's Rhetoric Explains Donald Trump's Persuasive Power. There, we'll move from the architecture of division to the art of persuasion itself, tracing how a philosopher from 2,000 years ago still holds the keys to understanding the speeches, the moments, and the emotional triggers that move millions today. It is the natural continuation of this journey, and if you've come this far, you already know that the more you see, the more you cannot unsee. The world will keep offering you the golden apples. The towers will keep rising and falling. The arenas will roar. But you, having walked this path, can choose differently. You can build from within, unite what has been split, and hold fast to the truth that mastery over your own mind is the one empire worth defending above all others.